Hello and welcome dear students. Today we are going to discuss an important topic, that is agroecosystems. In this lecture we will be learning about the objectives of introduction of agroecosystems, basic principles related to structure and function of agroecosystems, classification of agroecosystems, components and resources of agroecosystem, properties and stability of agroecosystem, ecological processes in the agroecosystem, and importance of biodiversity for maintenance of agroecosystems. Now, let us first discuss introduction of agriculture. Agriculture has been defined as the art, practice or science of crop and livestock production on organized farm units and is the world's most extensive industry upon which humankind depends. Indeed, the future of human populations is linked fundamentally with sustaining agricultural production. Agriculture is thus the single largest component of global land use, with some 36% of the world's land surface devoted to providing the primary produce needed to sustain people. Now, defining the agroecosystem, the term agroecosystem, farming system and agricultural system have been used to describe agricultural activities performed by groups of people. Agroecosystems are ecosystems in which humans have exercised a deliberate selectivity on the composition of living organisms. Agroecosystems are distinct from unmanaged ecosystems as they are intentionally altered and often intensively managed for the purposes of providing food, fiber and other products. Hence, they inherently have human community, economic and environmental ecological dimensions. Another definition by which agroecosystems can be defined is that agroecosystems are natural ecosystems that have been modified for the production of food and fiber, while they retain many of the characteristics of natural ecosystems. From a toxicological viewpoint, they are categorized by the frequent presence of agrochemicals, including pesticides, fertilizers and plant growth regulators. The nature and extent of the agrochemical contamination will vary considerably depending upon the nature of the crops and or livestock. This makes the ecosystem an open system, which means it depends from external processes to reintroduce fertilizing substances suitable to nourish a new growth and development process of organic material, that is plants. A natural ecosystem instead self-fertilizes as the biomass remains in its original setting. The introduction of pollutant substances, which in the case of intensive agriculture are chemical fertilizers, anti-parasitic and other chemical non-biodegradable substances which accumulate in the ecosystem or which seep in the subsoil, in some cases getting to the point of seriously polluting groundwaters, seas and rivers. Now, let us discuss the basic principles related to structure and function of agroecosystems. One of the important contributions of agroecology is a list of some basic principles relating to the structure and function of agroecosystems. The agroecosystem is the major ecological unit. It contains both biotic and abiotic components that are interdependent and interacting, and through which nutrients are cycled and energy flows. The function of agroecosystems is related to the flow of energy and cycling of materials through the structural components of the ecosystem, which is modified through the level of input management. The total amount of energy that flows through an agroecosystem depends upon the amount fixed by plants or producers and the inputs provided through management. The major functional unit of agroecosystem is the crop population. It occupies a niche in the system, playing a particular role in energy flow and cycling of nutrients. Now, let us discuss the classification of agroecosystems. Each region has a unique set of agroecosystems that results from local variations in climate, soil, economic relations, social nature, and history. Thus, a survey of the agroecosystems is bound to yield both commercial and subsistence agricultures using high or low levels of technology depending on the availability of land, capital, and labor. Some technologies in the more modern systems aim at land saving, that is, relying on biochemical inputs, while others emphasize labor saving, that is, mechanical inputs. Each farm is different. Many show a family likeness and can thus be grouped together a type of agriculture or agroecosystem. An area with similar types of agroecosystems can then be termed an agricultural region. Whittlesey 1936 recognized 5 criteria to classify agroecosystems in a region. The Crop and Livestock Association. The methods used to grow the crops and produce the livestock. The intensity of use of labor, capital, and organization, and the resulting output of the product. The disposal of the products for consumption. The ensemble of structures used to house and facilitate farming operations. Based on these criteria, in tropical environments, it is possible to recognize 7 main types of agricultural systems: shifting cultivation systems, semi-permanent rain-fed cultivation systems, permanent rain-fed cultivation systems, arable irrigation systems, perennial crop systems, grazing systems with regulated lay farming, that is, alternating arable cropping and sown pasture. Clearly, these systems are always changing, forced by population shifts, resource availability, environmental degradation, economic growth or stagnation, political change, and so on. Now, let us discuss the components and resources of agroecosystems. Main is the primary producer. Crops and weeds of the field are the primary producer of agroecosystem. For example, in a rice field, there are many producers like Durba, Muta, Sima, etc. also present with rice. And another, that is consumer. Among consumer, grasshoppers, aphids, bugs, ants, rats, birds, man, etc. are macro consumer, and frog, snake, hack are micro consumer. Now, discussing the resources of an agroecosystems, that is natural resources, human resources, capital resources, and production resources. Now, the natural resources. Natural resources are the given elements of land, water, climate and natural vegetation that are exploited by the farmer for agricultural production. The most important elements are the area of the farm, including its topography, the degree of fragmentation of the holding, its location with respect to the markets, soil depth, chemical status and physical attributes. Then availability of surface and groundwater, average rainfall, evaporation, solar radiation, temperature and natural vegetation, which may be an important source of food, animal feed, construction materials or medicines for humans, and which influences soil productivity in shifting cultivation systems. Then another resource, that is human resources. The human resources consist of the people who live and work within the farm and use its resources for agricultural production based on their traditional or economic incentives. The factors affecting these resources include the number of people the farm has to support in relation to its workforce and productivity, which governs the surplus available for sale. The capacity for work as influenced by nutrition and health, the inclination to work as influenced by economic status and cultural attitudes towards leisure, the flexibility of the workforce to adapt to seasonal variations in work demand, that is, the availability of hired labor and the degree of cooperation among the farmers. Now, another resource is capital resources. Capital resources are the goods and services created, purchased or borrowed by the people associated with the farm to facilitate their exploitation of natural resources for agricultural production. Capital resources can be grouped into four main categories, that is, permanent resources such as lasting modifications to the land or water resources for the purpose of agricultural production. Then semi-permanent resources are those that depreciate and have to be replaced periodically, like barns, fences, draft animals, implement. Then operational resources or consumable items used in the daily operations of the farm, like fertilizer, herbicides, manure and seeds. Then we have potential resources, or those the farmer does not own, by that may be commanded and that will eventually have to be repaid, like credit and assistance from relatives and friends. Then we have another resource, that is production resources. Production resources include the agricultural output of the farm, such as crops and livestock. These become capital resources when sold, and residues are nutrient inputs reinvested in the system. Now, let us discuss the ecological processes in the agroecosystem. Every farmer must manipulate the physical and biological resources of the farm for production, depending on the degree of technological modification. These activities affect 5 major ecological processes. Number 1, energetic, that is, energy enters an ecosystem as sunlight and undergoes numerous physical transformations. Biological energy is transferred into plants by photosynthesis and from one organism to another through food web, that is consumption. Number 2 is hydrological. Water is a fundamental part of all agricultural systems. In addition to its physiological role, water affects inputs of nutrients to and losses from the system through leaching and erosion. Water enters an ecosystem as precipitation, runoff, and irrigation water. It is lost through evaporation, transpiration, runoff, and drainage beyond the effective root zone of plants. Number third is biogeochemical. That is, the major biogeochemical inputs into an agroecosystem are the nutrients released from the soil, fixation of atmospheric nitrogen by legumes, non-symbiotic nitrogen fixing, particularly in rice growing, nutrients in rainfall and run-on water, fertilizer and nutrients in purchased human food, stock feed or animal manure. The important outputs include nutrients in crops and livestock consumed on or exported from the farm. Other outputs are losses are associated with leaching beyond the root zone, denitrification and volatilization of nitrogen, losses of nitrogen and sulfur to atmosphere when vegetation is burned, nutrients lost in soil erosion caused by runoff or wind, and nutrients in human or livestock excreta that are lost from the farm. Then number 4, successional. The process by which organisms occupy a site and gradually change environmental conditions so that other species can replace the original inhabitants is radically changed with modern agriculture. Agricultural fields usually represent secondary successional stages, where an existing community is disrupted by deforestation and plowing and by maintaining a simple man-made community at the site. Then number 5 is biotic regulation processes. Controlling succession, that is plant invasion and competition, and protecting against insect pests and diseases are major problems in maintaining production continuity in agroecosystem. Farmers have used several approaches universally. These are no action, preventive action, that is use of resistant crop varieties, manipulation of planting dates, row spaces, modifying access to pests to plants, or successive action, that is chemical pesticides, biological control, cultural techniques. Each can be evaluated in terms of inputs, outputs, storage and transformations. Now, let us discuss some properties of agroecosystems. And number 1 is productivity. It is net increment of values products per unit resources, that is land, labor, energy, capital, and is commonly measured as annual yield per hectare. Number 2 is stability. That is, it is the degree to which productivity remain constant in spite of normal small scale fluctuation in environmental variables such as climate or in the economic condition in market. And number 3 is sustainability, which is defined as the ability of the system to maintain its productivity when subject to stress or perturbation. And number 4, equitability. It is a measure of how evenly the produce of agroecosystem is distributed among its human beneficial. The more equitable the system, the more evenly are the products to fed shared among the population of the farm, village, regions or nation. Now, let us discuss the stability of agroecosystems. Under conventional agriculture, humans have simplified the structure of the environment over vast areas, replacing nature diversity with small number of cultivated plants and domesticated animals. This process of simplification reached an extreme form in a monoculture. The objective of this simplification to increase the proportion of solar energy fixed by the plant communities that is directly available to humans. The dominant components are plants, animals selected, propagated, tended and harvested by humans for a particular purpose. In comparison to unmanaged ecosystems, the composition and structure of agroecosystems are simple. The plant biomass is composed of stands usually dominated by one major crop plant within well-defined field boundaries, while one crop may be undersown with another, and in the case of grass, under cereals or field crops or grass under orchard trees, there is normally one layer or strata formed by the crop itself. In comparison, field crops, grass legume, forage crops and tree crops cultivate for food or forage represent a relatively small proportions of the total agricultural biomass. The net result is an artificial ecosystem that requires continuous human intervention. Commercial seed bed preparation and mechanized planting replace natural methods of seed dispersal. Chemical pesticides replaces natural controls on population of weeds, insects and pathogens, and genetic manipulation replaces natural processes of plant evolution and selection. Even decomposition is altered since plant growth is harvested and soil fertility maintained, not through nutrient recycling but with fertilizers. Although modern agroecosystems have proven capable of growing population, there is considerable evidence that the ecological equilibrium in such artificial systems is very fragile. Now, let us discuss the importance of biodiversity for maintenance of agroecosystems. Maintenance of biodiversity within an agroecosystem is necessary to ensure the continued supply of goods and services, such as number first is evolution, crop and livestock improvement through breeding. The interaction between the environment, genetic resources and management practices that occurs in situ within agroecosystems ensures that a dynamic portfolio of agricultural biodiversity is maintained and adapted to changing conditions. Number second, biological support to production. Support is provided by the organisms that make up the biological diversity of the agroecosystem. For example, soil fauna and microorganisms, together with the roots of the plants and trees, ensure nutrient cycling. Pests and diseases are kept in check by predators and disease control organisms, as well as genetic resistances in crop plants themselves. And insect pollinators contribute to the cross-fertilization of outcrossing crop plants. Number third is wider ecological functions. Valuable ecological processes that result from the interactions between species and between species and the environment include the maintenance of soil fertility, water quality and climate regulation. This was all about today's topic. Hope you have enjoyed it well. Thank you for watching.